US President Donald Trump says he's terminating trade talks with Canada over an ad featuring the words of former US President Ronald Reagan. Ontario's provincial government released the ad with audio from Reagan's 1987 speech, where he said tariffs hurt American workers and consumers and triggered fierce trade wars. In a social media post, President Trump called the ad fake and announced the end of negotiations. Paula Newton is back with...
Señores, el día de hoy Donald Trump estuvo fuera de control. Y lo peor es que su contrincante, que no debería de ser un contrincante, debería de ser un aliado, Canadá, ya no se deja intimidar. Todo esto después de la rabieta que provocó Trump el día de ayer durante horas de la noche, cuando anunció que Estados Unidos termina todas las negociaciones comerciales con Canadá. ¿Cuál fue la razón para este berrinche? Al parecer al trumpismo no le gustó un anuncio que estuvo circulando en Estados Unidos hecho por la provincia de Ontario. Así es, amigos, solo por eso. En ese anuncio se puede ver cómo se utiliza un fragmento real de un discurso de Ronald Reagan, donde el expresidente habla de su apoyo al libre comercio. Es más, él decía estar en contra de los aranceles. Pero claro, Donald Trump salió furioso diciendo que el video es falso, que todo el mundo sabe que Reagan amaba los aranceles, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Mientras tanto, pues el primer ministro canadiense Mark Carney respondió de una forma, yo diría, bastante elegante. No vamos a escuchar el ruido de Trump. Solo controlamos lo que podemos controlar. Si hay áreas donde podamos alcanzar acuerdos, perfecto. Pero ya hemos pasado de página. Estamos construyendo relaciones con otros socios comerciales en todo el mundo. Por si faltaba, también el premier de Ontario, Doug Ford, publicó el discurso completo de Reagan y bueno, pues básicamente dijo: escuchen ustedes mismos. Reagan creía en una alianza fuerte entre Estados Unidos y Canadá. Pues bueno, señores, ¿qué es lo que ha estado haciendo Trump durante todo este día? Lo de siempre, desahogándose en su red social. En uno de los mensajes escribió lo siguiente: Canadá hizo trampa y fue atrapada. Publicaron un anuncio diciendo falsamente que Reagan no apoyaba los aranceles, cuando en realidad los amaba. Canadá está tratando de influir ilegalmente en la Corte Suprema de los Estados Unidos. Y bueno, pues bla 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 bla, y terminó con su clásico Make America Great Again. Lo más ridículo, amigos, de todo esto es que Donald Trump agradeció a la Fundación Ronald Reagan por supuestamente exponer el fraude. Pero a ver, resulta que esta fundación ya no tiene nada que ver con la familia Reagan. Ahora está manejada por gente que está vinculada a Trump y a Fox News. O sea, aquí estamos viendo una operación completamente maga. El que es el presidente actual de esta fundación, que es David Trujillo, trabajó en la primera administración de Trump, luego pasó a Fox Media. Es decir, esto fue un ataque perfectamente coordinado entre Trump y su gente. Y si es que aún quedan dudas, miren lo que publicó Trump después, claramente en mayúscula. Estados Unidos es fuerte, es rico, es seguro, gracias a los aranceles. El caso más importante en la historia de la Corte Suprema está en marcha. Dios bendiga a América. Claro, mientras el 99% del país sufre con precios altísimos, con salarios que no alcanzan, pero claro, para los multimillonarios que invierten en inteligencia artificial, todo va genial, ¿no? Solo para que recordemos qué fue lo que publicó Trump anoche en su comunicado. La Fundación Reagan acaba de anunciar que Canadá utilizó un anuncio falso con Ronald Reagan hablando en contra de los aranceles. El anuncio costó $75,000 y fue hecho para interferir en decisiones de la Corte Suprema. Por tanto, todas las negociaciones comerciales con Canadá quedan terminadas. Así es, amigos, así de delirante. Bueno, pues vayamos a la parte interesante, los clips. Le preguntaron a su asesor económico principal, que es Kevin Hassett, si es que había visto el anuncio. Y bueno, su respuesta fue esta.
Music it now to get it back under control.
And then on this ad that President Trump was referring to up in Canada and Ronald Reagan, have you seen the ad, sir, yourself?
I'm not going to talk about that.
Más tarde, en este mismo día, el primer ministro Mark Carney le preguntaron qué es lo que pensaba sobre Trump y sobre su decisión de terminar las conversaciones comerciales. Y bueno, señores, una respuesta que fue tan fría como precisa.
All right, good morning. Look, for months we have stressed the importance of distinguishing things we can control and things we can't control. We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We recognize that that policy has fundamentally changed from the policy in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And it's a situation where the United States has tariffs against every one of their trading partners to different degrees. And it's in that context that our officials, my colleagues, have been working with their American colleagues on detailed, constructive negotiations, discussions on specific transactions, specific sectors, steel, aluminum, and energy. And a lot of progress has been made. And we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries. Now, what we can control, absolutely, is how we build here at home. And that's the focus of Budget 2025, generational investment here in Canada. And what we can also control, or at least heavily influence, is developing new partnerships and opportunities, including with the economic giants of Asia, which is the focus.
Ahora bien, para que todos vean la realidad, aquí está un discurso real de Ronald Reagan del año 1988. Obvio que no es el mismo anuncio, pero quiero que entiendan esto. Deja clarísimo lo que pensaba sobre los aranceles. Recordemos, Reagan fue un defensor del libre comercio y él consideraba que los aranceles eran dañinos para la economía. Miren ustedes mismos.
Our peaceful trading partners are not our enemies. They are our allies. We should beware of the demagogues who are ready to declare a trade war against our friends, weakening our economy, our national security, and the entire free world, all while cynically waving the American flag. The expansion of the international economy is not a foreign invasion. It is an American triumph, one we worked hard to achieve, and something central to our vision of a peaceful and prosperous world of freedom.
Y ahora veamos lo que Trump y esta fundación Reagan, tomada por los trumpistas, dicen que es falso, y si escuchan es el mismo discurso. Y bueno, para ser justos, Reagan mencionó que en casos extremadamente urgentes podría imponerse un arancel solo temporal a Japón, pero aclaró que debía ser una medida quirúrgica y muy corta. El mensaje central fue claro: los aranceles son malos.
Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. Now, there are sound historical reasons for this. For those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing. And today, many economic analysts and historians argue that high tariff legislation passed back in that period, called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, greatly deepened the Depression and prevented economic recovery. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group, who forget that more than 5 million American jobs are directly tied to the foreign export business, and additional millions are tied to imports. Well, I've never forgotten those jobs, and on trade issues, by and large, we've done well.
Luego, pues Kevin Hassett volvió a aparecer en los programas de televisión intentando justificar lo injustificable.
What's going on with Canada? Here is the Truth Social posted last night. Canada cheated and got caught. They fraudulently took a big buy ad saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, when actually he loved tariffs for our country and its national security. I've seen the video going back to the 80s from the Presidential Library. What's with this latest spat, and how far does it go?
Well, I don't think that anything that the President truthed yesterday is about just one thing. The fact is that the negotiations with the Canadians have not been very collegial. They've not been going well. I think the President's very frustrated. He wants a great deal with Canada, just like he wants a great deal with Mexico. But a sign of how difficult the Canadians have been is that we're now kind of negotiating with the Mexicans all by themselves rather than looking at all three.
I'm sorry to jump in here. I'm just trying to get nothing. I got one more thing to get to here, and they're trying to wrap me. Was that a point of negotiation that we saw last night? Is that what that is?
I think the President's very frustrated with Canada, and he has a right to be, and I think that's what that is.
Okay. On the shut.
Y claro, pues Fox Business no podía quedarse atrás. El presentador dijo: Donald Trump anunció el fin de las negociaciones comerciales luego de que Canadá hiciera un video falso. Un video falso que es literalmente un discurso que ya ha hecho Ronald Reagan. Vean esto.
Announced all trade talks with Canada have been called off because of an alleged fake ad that showed Ronald Reagan bad-mouthing tariffs. Okay, the President's angry about this. He immediately just said, no more talks with Canada. But where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, the President, I'm sure, has his reasons. There have been a lot of talks with Canada. I've been involved in some of them. And I think the President, probably more than anything, is frustrated with the progress that he's making with Canada. And sometimes when you're frustrated, a timeout is the right call. And the President's saying no talks with Canada. I would guess that at some point between now and the end of his term, he'll talk to Canada again. But yes, right now, I think there's been frustration with the behavior of the Canadians, the demeanor of the Canadians, the positions of the Canadians. And so it's probably a good time to take a break for a little while.
Y bueno, pues mientras todo esto sucede, Trump sigue hablando de los posibles planes militares en contra de Venezuela y de los incidentes con barcos pesqueros en el Caribe.
Number one, there is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela. These are outboard boats that, in order for them to get to Miami, would have to stop and refuel 20 times. They're in all likely going to Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island right off of the coast of Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons to be worried about this. But number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? When you're at war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's supposed to be thoughtful. It's supposed to be debated. And we're not supposed to do it willy-nilly. And then when you have war, you just kill people in the war zone. And even then there are rules of engagement. But interdicting drugs has always been a criminal activity and a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people. We actually present evidence and convict them.
Ahí lo tienen, amigos. Otra vez el trumpismo en modo autodestrucción, peleándose con todos, incluso con Canadá, manipulando la memoria de Ronald Reagan para justificar su guerra comercial. Ahora bien, amigos, ¿recuerdan cuando Trump decía que solo él podía arreglarlo todo? Bueno, pues parece que en esta ocasión ya no quiere arreglarlo. Ahora quiere moler a golpes el país. El cierre de gobierno, impulsado y defendido por el Partido Republicano, ya no es un juego político en Washington. ahora está empezando a golpear directamente a todos en los bolsillos, en las mesas de millones de familias estadounidenses. Lo más irónico es que mientras las familias no pueden pagarse la comida, no pueden pagar la renta, en la Casa Blanca están demoliendo el ala este para construir un salón de fiestas, literalmente. Básicamente el gobierno está paralizado porque los republicanos están tercos, se niegan a negociar con los demócratas sobre los subsidios del Obamacare. ¿Cuál ha sido el resultado? Cientos de miles de trabajadores federales sin salario, familias sin asistencia alimentaria, comunidades enteras que están empezando a sentir el impacto, tanto demócratas como republicanos. Y mientras tanto, pues el propio Trump, al parecer, está más preocupado por defender su nueva mansión presidencial que por resolver una crisis que él mismo ha provocado. Veamos de qué se trata.
It is day 277, if you are counting, of the second Trump administration. Right now, Republicans are trying to deal with the pain of a government shutdown without actually ending it. Here's what I mean. Democrats say Republicans could end the shutdown by coming to the table and talking Obamacare subsidies. But there is no sign of that. Instead, Republican Senator Ron Johnson tried to pass a bill to pay federal workers that are currently on the job and not getting paid. Democrats blocked that, arguing it would give the president too much power to pick winners and losers. Senate Republicans are also considering a bill to keep SNAP benefits flowing, as tens of millions of Americans could potentially lose food assistance as early as next month. And we have mentioned that the White House is reportedly looking for ways to only pay air traffic controllers. Notice what is not on the list: any bills, any talks to extend Obamacare subsidies. But the pressure is clearly mounting as the pain of the shutdown is spreading. Meanwhile, we are getting a very clear look at who holds the power in the Trump White House. Today, the president announced that he decided not to send National Guard troops into San Francisco. And according to the president himself, that decision was made because friends of his in the area asked him not to do it. And speaking of power, the president pardoned the convicted founder of cryptocurrency exchange Binance. The chief executive, known as CZ, pleaded guilty to enabling money laundering back in 2023. And the president, well, he knows him very, very well. Why? Well, CZ's company played a major role early on in helping World Liberty Financial. Remember what that company is? It is the president's cryptocurrency company. We're going to get into more of that later on tonight. But first, let's just get smarter with the help of our leadoff panel. Peter Baker is here, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times. Andrew Desiderio, senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, and former Democratic senator from the state of Alabama, Doug Jones. Peter, let's start with you and this shutdown. Obviously, it is a major issue if tens of millions of Americans miss their SNAP benefits. Is this putting more pressure on one side or the other, or just all of Washington?
Well, it should put pressure on all of Washington, but the question is at the moment whether either party feels that they can, manage to blame the other one for it, right? A lot of people are going to be affected by this. A lot of real people in real lives. It's not a game to them. It's not a political contest to them. But here in Washington, unfortunately, that's the way it's often looked at by many people. And I think that there's a, this idea that somehow one party can gain the advantage over the other on this shutdown. In fact, polls suggest there's not a whole lot of sympathy, frankly, for a shutdown, on either side. They may agree that with the Democrats' position on Obamacare, that's what polls do show. But they don't think that this government shutdown at the moment is something that they're enthusiastic about.
Andrew, you reported that Democrats are trying to take this fight directly to Trump. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, look, they're trying to get the president's attention here. The argument that they're making is that the president is the only one who can end this because he is the one who has expressed at least an openness in the past to negotiating on this health care issue. Remember, Donald Trump wants to make sure that Republicans keep the House of Representatives in 2026. Cost of living is already a major issue. It's going to be a major issue in all of these House and Senate races in 2026. When you add on top of that rising health care premiums, that is a recipe for disaster for Republicans running in tight races all across the country for, again, the House and the Senate. So Democrats are making the calculation right now that the pressure will continue to build on Republicans and on President Trump specifically, because President Trump will ultimately realize that it is in his own political benefit to do something about these expiring Obamacare subsidies so that he doesn't get the blame for rising premiums that come from that as a result. The problem is right now, the president is showing no signs of feeling any pressure whatsoever. John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, and Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, seem to have a pretty tight grip on the president right now in terms of his messaging and his posture on all of this. And look, tomorrow night, the president is jetting off to Asia for 5 or 6 days. I mean, this is not being treated as an emergency situation that it clearly is.
And the president has made it clear he does not like Obamacare. He considers it a disaster, but he has yet to present any other plan. Doug, take us to your neck of the woods, because Huntsville is a town with a very high concentration of government workers, and an Alabama newspaper is reporting that people in that town are starting to feel shutdown pains. Nobody's going to dinner. Nobody's taking Ubers. What can you tell us?
You know, look, this is, I lived through the shutdown in the Senate in 2019, and this is about the time that things start hitting home. It's about the time people quit going to dinner. It's about the time that, clothes are not being bought for school. So, it's hitting some 45,000 government workers in Alabama, and that has a ripple effect into the economy, into the local communities. And I think it's going to hurt a lot more. The difference, I think, this time, though, is people understand that there's also a bigger issue. Yes, it is hurting them now, but they're also they know a lot of their neighbors are going to be hurt if they lose those subsidies. We have a ton, hundreds of thousands of people in Alabama that will lose health care or either see their health care premiums rise beyond what they can afford.
Peter, let's talk about the East Wing, or what was formerly known as the East Wing, because now it is gone. Many presidents have renovated the White House, but is this ballroom project, I don't know how else to put it, sort of the physical manifestation of Trump's second term, doing whatever he wants, whenever he wants, with no guardrails or permission from anyone else?
Yeah, it fits into the notion of a wrecking ball presidency, right? He's taken a wrecking ball to the federal government, demolishing agencies and firing people and having to rehire people they fired because they didn't know they were firing the wrong people, and so on and so forth. They have not given the impression over these last 8-9 months of a thought through, considered strategy so much as something that's just out there to whack away at the existing order. Well, this is sort of a visual manifestation of that. It certainly plays into that notion. Now, look, there's an argument to be made for what he's doing. The argument is that the White House for a long time has not had the capacity to have the kind of state dinners that presidents like to have. You can only get about 140 people seated in the state dining room, and most presidents lately have taken to holding state dinners on the South Lawn in a cathedral tent, which isn't exactly, ideal. And so the idea of building a ballroom, I think, it has some people who support it. But I think what a lot of people are looking at here is a guy who took a wrecking ball of the East Wing without asking anybody, without talking to anybody, without having any kind of consultations, no hearings, no, discussions with historians about what could be preserved and how we can do this in a way that doesn't tamper with, a history of a house that doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the people. And I think that the notion that you're going to build this very massive addition that he's talking about that could dwarf the size of the original White House is such a radical change. It goes beyond what we saw with Teddy Roosevelt and Harry Truman and some of the changes over the course of history.
Andrew, some Republicans are defending the demolition, saying the president can do this. He's doing it with his own money or money from private donors, which we can take issue with that. But I want to share what Lisa Murkowski said.
As an American who kind of feels like the White House is people's house, kind of like, oh.
Ok, señores, el costo político, el costo humano ya se está acumulando. Trabajadores federales sin pago. Familias que han dependido de programas como el SNAP, sin asistencia alimentaria. Precios médicos subiendo por las nubes. Porque, claro, los subsidios del Obamacare están a punto de expirar. Todo esto está sucediendo bajo un gobierno que dice defender al pueblo, pero que al parecer en la práctica solo defiende a los donantes, a los ricos, a los intereses corporativos, etc. Mientras vemos que el pueblo común siente el golpe en sus hogares. Y claro, Trump sigue comportándose como si nada, organizando fiestas, planeando viajes a Asia, jugando golf, hasta otorgando perdones presidenciales a sus amigos empresarios condenados por lavado de dinero. Esa es la esencia del trumpismo. Un gobierno que no gobierna, sino que improvisa, destruye y, claro, luego culpa a los demás por el desastre. Y ojo que quiero recalcar eso porque hay quienes defienden la postura diciendo que al menos no está usando el dinero de los contribuyentes para construir el salón de baile del ala este, ¿no? Claro. Yo te pregunto, ¿de dónde viene ese dinero privado? De corporaciones, las que esperan favores políticos a cambio. Donantes, que mientras millones pasan hambre, están comprando acceso al poder. No es excusa, es una prueba. La corrupción sistemática que rodea este gobierno. Este cierre del gobierno no solo va a ser una crisis presupuestaria, amigos, es el símbolo de lo que pasa cuando un país es dirigido por ego y no por sentido común. Trump no está liderando, está castigando. Y lo peor es que quienes más lo sufren no son los políticos, son las familias, las que no pueden comprar comida, los trabajadores que no reciben su cheque, los pequeños negocios que están cerrando. Hemos visto, yo mismo les he mostrado videos de familias, de militares, haciendo filas interminables en los bancos de comida. El Partido Republicano de Trump puede intentar resistir, pero el calor político, la presión social, ya está subiendo. Cuando los estadounidenses comienzan a sentir el golpe directo en casa, ahí, amigos, es cuando la máscara se cae. Así que la gran pregunta es, ¿hasta cuándo va a aguantar la gente este tipo de liderazgo? ¿Ustedes creen que este cierre va a ser el punto de quiebre para el Partido Rojo, para el Partido Republicano? ¿O será que Donald Trump logrará una vez más desviar la culpa y salir ileso? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerda, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.